Good afternoon and welcome to today's SAMHSA-sponsored webinar titled Peer Education and Support for People with SMI in Correctional Facilities, presented on behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI. Today's presentation will be recorded, and the recording link, slides, and a certificate of attendance will be sent via email to everyone who attended today. Closed captioning is available and can be viewed by clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen or clicking the link in the chat pod to view in a separate window. We also have an ASL interpreter who should be seen spotlit on your screen. During the presentation, please add your questions and comments in the chat box, and questions will be asked out loud for the presenters to answer at the end of the presentation. When the presentation ends, please take a few moments to complete a brief survey that will show in your browser as you exit the platform. Thank you again for joining us, and we will now begin today's presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Becca Lane. I am the Manager of National Peer Education Programs at NAMI National. And I am joined here today by Marcus McCoy from NAMI El Paso, Texas. He is a program leader and a state trainer with NAMI Texas. Brittany Farber is the president and CEO of NAMI Dubuque in Iowa, and David Lang is the director of peer programs at NAMI Dubuque in Iowa as well. Next slide, please. So just a brief agenda of what you will hear today. I will begin with an introduction to NAMI and NAMI peer programming. And then I will turn it over to Marcus, who will talk about programming within the Texas correctional system. And then I will pass it over to Brittany and David, who will talk about programming within the Iowa correctional system. Next slide, please. So about NAMI. NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Today we are an alliance of more than 650 local affiliates and 50 state organizations who work in your community to raise awareness and provide support and education that was not previously available to those in need. Through our programs and services, we challenge stigma, champion supportive policies, and support and empower individuals and family members. We are building stronger communities and a better future for everyone affected by mental illness. Next slide, please. So what do we do? Our vision to start is a world where all people affected by mental illness live healthy, fulfilling lives. And our mission is to provide advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that individuals and families can build better lives. And you might hear me repeat some of these words and sentences because it is so deeply ingrained in who we are and what we do. So next slide, please. So NAMI's work centers on 5 key areas. We educate, offered in thousands of communities across the United States through NAMI, state organizations, and NAMI affiliates. Our education programs ensure hundreds of thousands of families, individuals, and educators get the support and information that they need in their mental health journey. Throughout the country, throughout the country, our nation, our NAMI state organizations and affiliates host support groups for both those with mental illness and caregivers so that no one feels alone in their mental health journey. We advocate. So NAMI helps shape public policy for people with mental illness and their families, and provides volunteer leaders with the tools, resources, and skills necessary to save mental health in all states. And we listen. Our toll-free NAMI HelpLine allows us to respond personally to hundreds of thousands of requests each year, providing free information and support. It's a much needed lifeline for many. And then we lead public awareness events and activities, including year-round awareness initiatives and NAMI walks, successfully fight stigma and encourage understanding. NAMI works with reporters as well on a daily basis to make sure our country understands how important mental health is. So next slide, please. So these are the key principles of NAMI national signature programs. All our programs are peer-led or grounded in lived experience. Mental illness is biologically based, and it's not anybody's fault. Stigma is a major barrier to people getting the help that they need. And the onset of mental illness can be traumatic and disruptive, and these principles shape how we design and deliver our programs. Next slide, please. NAMI offers education programs for different audiences, including families, caregivers, and providers. Across the country, thousands of trained NAMI volunteers bring these peer-led programs to a wide variety of community settings, from churches to schools to NAMI affiliates. With the unique understanding of people with lived experience, these programs and support programs can provide outstanding free education, skills training, and support. So examples include family to family, peer to peer, basics, home front, and provider. All of these programs are free and led by trained volunteers with that lived experience. That's so important. They focus on education, skill building, and empowerment. So these are the classes that are available. Most of them are multi-week or are held in seminar fashion. So next slide, please. These are our NAMI presentations. These are shorter awareness-based programs, like In Our Own Voice and In the Silence, sharing your story with law enforcement and family and friends. I'll focus more on a couple of them later. But again, they focus on increasing awareness and reducing stigma and encouraging early intervention. And most include personal storytelling. And these are also offered in Spanish. Okay, next slide. We also offer NAMI support groups. So NAMI Connection is a support group for people living with mental health conditions. Groups can meet weekly, every other week, or monthly, depending on their location. Many support groups are also virtual, and attendance is open to anyone across the country. This program is available in Spanish through NAMI Conexión. And then NAMI Family Support Group is the same as Connections, but for families and caregivers to those living with mental illness. And this is also offered in Spanish. All right, and then we also have the NAMI Helpline. So next slide, please. The NAMI Helpline is a free nationwide service. It provides emotional support, information, and resources and referrals, and resource referrals, sorry. It is not a crisis line, but it connects people to appropriate support. All right, next slide, please. Next slide, please. The helpline can be reached by phone, text, or email. It is available Monday through Friday. Excuse me. For crisis situations, though, individuals are directed to the 988 Lifeline. There are also specialized options for caregivers and young people. And there's even a line available for Spanish speakers. Okay, next line. All right, so NAMI programs are increasingly being used in justice settings. Many individuals in correctional facilities live with untreated mental illness. So our programs bring education, support, and connection into these environments. The most common programs that are seen in these justice-involved settings are Sicily, sharing your story with law enforcement, In Our Own Voice, IOV, peer-to-peer, P2P, and Connections, which is you'll see as CN. All right, next slide. Sharing your story with law enforcement. So this program prepares individuals to share their lived experience with law enforcement audiences. These presentations are often part of CIT or crisis intervention team training. The goal is to increase understanding and improve crisis response. We actually helped develop this program through a grant with the Nashville Crisis and Police Department. But again, you'll hear more about this later. So next slide, please. I think it was Memphis anyway. So Sicily includes a self-paced course and a live coaching session, so participants are learn how to structure their story, describe barriers to care, and communicate effectively with law enforcement. The training helps build confidence and presentation skills. And NAMI developed this as a presentation program that to be paired with CIT, like I mentioned. All right, next slide.
I'd like to think that the job has changed and that it's allowed us to slow down a little bit. It's placed a focus on actually helping people in ways that are not just about locking them up and putting them away.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Jolissa and I'm with NAMI. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the largest grassroots organization started by the friends and family of those with serious mental illnesses. So we are not clinicians, we're not doctors, we're not therapists. We are people with lived experience.
Our NAMI friends are here today because they want to see you succeed. One of the highlights of the whole week is the presentation from our friends from NAMI. So we have Jolisa and Christine. They've both been here before. They do a great job at explaining their stories. When they experience that emotional connection with our NAMI presenters, it accentuates their experience. And very importantly, it promotes the shift in attitude.
Sure, part of our job is law enforcement, but it's also about upholding people's constitutional rights and allowing people to live their best lives. And sometimes that's not making an arrest, it's actually connecting somebody to services for mental health, for substance use.
I mean, this is an opportunity that you don't get too often, right? Where you are in an environment where everyone's safe and you can ask questions and actually listen to someone who's willing to share their story, because they want you to know, they want the officer to know, you know, what they're going through or what they've been through.
It's a tough job. It's a job where, you know, physiologically we're wired to run away from danger. They're using their willpower to go towards it, to rescue, to save, to protect. But to be able to get away from that mentality of I'm here to fix something that in reality is not fixable. It's something that we need to manage in the moment.
If it's a younger officer, if they haven't been to a call where somebody is in crisis, I can guarantee that they will be, and definitely before the end of their first year of service.
I specifically remember a call that we went to, and the family was calling on their adult son. He was younger, and we had determined almost immediately that he was going to go to the hospital. But I remember putting him in the back seat of the police car and him screaming out the window like, "You were not even listening to me. You're treating me like an animal." I'd still rather be out in the field handling calls. But after going through this training and seeing how beneficial it was to be able to hear someone from NAMI share their story with the police, absolutely, I'd do this training anytime.
I think a really important aspect of the NAMI training is that we get to see that people do recover, people do get better, and people go on to lead successful lives.
If I have one word that Share Your Story from NAMI does for the people in the class is hope. It provides hope, especially when at times folks come to the class not feeling it anymore because of just the crisis. And so hope is definitely ignited.
Great. And I did see comments in the chat about about there not being captions with the video. I don't know why that's the case. We make sure that all of our materials are as ADA compliant as can possibly be. So, all right. So NAMI in our own voice. It's a presentation that shares personal stories of mental health and recovery. It is available as a 45, 60, or 90-minute presentation. Presenters are trained in how to tell their story in the format of an introduction of who they are, what happened, what helps, and what's next. So the stories are meant to give that feeling of hope and resilience, because they're not just focused on the moments of crisis. They are also showing what has helped them to get to where they are today and what they see happening next, which is always exciting to hear. Next slide.
The incidence of mental illness in our society is almost 1 in 5, to some say even 1 in 4.
People are being diagnosed with mental health conditions more and more every day.
It can be your family member, your friend, your neighbor, and even your physician.
It doesn't define who they are, it's just one part of them.
A lot of people who have some sort of mental illness, they're afraid to come out and talk about it.
And that's the whole point of me being here, is to just let people know that you can have a mental illness and you can still have a happy, successful life.
So today we were out working on the new video for NAMI's In Our Own Voice presentation.
In Our Own Voice presentation is a program through National Alliance on Mental Illness where we go out and we go to various venues and we share our story about what life is like living with a mental health condition.
I think In Our Own Voice is something really important to have in any institution.
Whether you're at a school or a correctional facility or an office.
Of all the programs that I'm trained in with NAMI, I think that this one for me is the most meaningful because it gets me out into the community. It gives me an opportunity to talk to folks about mental illness, to kind of shed a light on what it is and what it isn't.
I think it's important to have conversations and break down stigma because of the fact that it's so prevalent.
We see images of mental illness in the media that don't really portray the whole story.
It's important that people know that there's a place to go to where they can get information and get help.
It's not all dark days. There's a lot of light that can come out of your situation.
By sharing our stories with each other, we helped each other a lot today. I felt like I was not alone.
To find out more about this free presentation, go to nami.org/IOOV.
All right, NAMI Peer-to-Peer is an 8-session course for adults with mental health conditions. It focuses on recovery, personal growth, and self-advocacy. Participants build skills like goal setting, communication, and stress management. The course includes discussions, activities, and videos that are ADA compliant. It is structured but flexible and does not recommend specific treatments. The focus is on empowerment and shared learning. Next slide, please. Here are some quotes from people who have taken the NAMI peer-to-peer class and how important it was to them. They often report feeling less alone and more hopeful, and they gain coping skills and confidence, and many become more involved in advocacy and NAMI programs. A lot of them want to find out what's next, and so they go on to become state trainers or join connection support groups. It's a really valuable experience for those who this may be the first time they hear about mental health conditions and coping skills and all of that. So, all right, next slide, please. So next is NAMI Connections. It's a peer-led support group, like I mentioned before, for adults with mental health conditions. It's free, it's confidential, and it's structured. So participants will build coping skills. They'll reduce that isolation that often comes with living with a mental health condition, and they'll find community. Next slide, please. Here are some quotes about NAMI Connections and what they've done to help, how they've helped. And with that being said, I am going to now transition over to our first speaker from the field, our partner in the field, Marcus McCoy, who will talk to you about his experience and what he has done with the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, babe. So, hello everyone, I am Marcus McCoy. I am a state trainer as well as a program leader for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. My focus is in connection recovery support groups. And this is a really full circle moment for me because not only am I a part of NAMI, but I also am a former correction officer as well as a United States Army combat veteran. Next slide. All right, so let's dive into why this work matters. So we have a sense of connection with the outside world. The reason why I say that is a lot of these support groups that take place within the correctional facilities, when we go to these places, we're talking about people who sometimes have lost hope. And just having somebody come in from the outside world to let them know that they're cared about, their love, really has a strong connection to the outside world. I mentioned hope. Then it helps individuals prepare for reentry. When trust/connection happens, vulnerability can increase. Now, sometimes in this environment, there's limited access to peer-based support. I'll talk about that a little later on in the presentation. And then we have high rates of serious mental illnesses in correctional facilities, untreated mental illnesses in these facilities, and then recidivism. Next slide. So why this work matters continues. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are some peer-reviewed sources, quotes that just really emphasize why this work is so important. So arguably, the early phase of remand imprisonment is the most suitable setting for establishing the number of mentally ill that is involved in criminality of some degree of seriousness. Then we have high rates of serious mental illnesses among jail inmates pose challenges for the criminal justice system and risk for the individual with serious mental illnesses. Then I'll read the last one. A reduction in concern, stress, and anxiety over reentry needs could play a role in how they respond to challenges or struggles that occur shortly after release from prison, a time when the risk of recidivism is at its all-time highs. Next slide. Now, I'm going to talk quickly about how the partnership got started in my particular area. So we have Isidro Torres, who is the executive director for NAMI in my area, along with Alessandra. She works for NAMI, and then Alma is a former employee. Basically, what happened is they saw the need. We got a lot of feedback from the actual jail that we actually do the groups in about some of the struggles and trials and tribulations that the individuals housed there were going through. And they really just took the lead. It took a while to get it off the ground, but once they got off the ground, we saw progress instantly, and it just really was a worthwhile program. Next slide. So in my particular facility, the only program that is offered currently right now is Recovery Support Group. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about what implementation looks like from my standpoint when we got integrated into the facility. So the case manager within the facility or facility staff refers the participants to the group. Groups are held 3 times a month. They're an hour and a half. And you got to realize these groups are happening in their living conditions, in this case, would be their pods. Then we have adhering to facility security protocols. There were a lot of things that we didn't know initially about how the protocols work in the individual facility we're in. So it's important to, be on board with the staff and know the do's and don'ts. One of the things I know, in particular in our facility, you can't have any Apple devices, whether it be watches, phones, of any kind. Then we have one guard/sheriff with us at all times, and we generally start the group with a caseworker present. I can't stress how important it is to have that caseworker present. The only materials we are allowed to bring into the group are our facilitator guides, and all the other material are printed for us by the staff at the jail. Next slide. So these are some challenges and lessons learned. When you go into these facilities, don't expect the individuals participating in the group to be an open book. In my experience, it wasn't initially like that. You have to build that trust, that rapport. This group differs because of the dynamics, mainly because of demographics. A lot of times people seem to be, in my experience, more closed off just because of the actual environment that we are having these support groups in. You must be flexible. If you don't go in there into those facilities with an open mind and really trying to invest in that sense of community, you're gonna have a lot of problems because again, it's the dynamics and the demographics of where they're at. Then we have language barriers. So I live in El Paso, Texas, and one of the things, and I don't speak Spanish. So one of the things that I ran into initially in my support groups was not having the ability to actually speak Spanish. So as you can imagine, when you're trying to relay a message, if the person you're trying to relay it to doesn't understand you and vice versa, it really makes it challenging to do your job as a facilitator. And then, as I mentioned before, security protocols. Facilitators should be briefed on these protocols every time they actually get ready to go into the actual facilities to do these groups, and they should have an overall general overview of do's and don'ts. Next slide. So building buy-in with the staff. This is very important as well. I will tell you from my experience, the thing that really built that bridge of trust was when we would go into these groups. Initially, like I said, some of them were closed off. But as the staff began to see these changes and began to see that the individuals, they were excited about having group. They wanted us to come back. That was really impactful. Then I have pre-briefings and back briefings. One of the things we do is after we have a group, me and the facilitator along with the caseworker, we would just kind of give each other feedback on how we thought the group went. That way, the next time we could come into the facility, we would be more prepared. And the pre-briefings, along with my co-facilitator, in these pre-briefings, we would get information about things like, okay, well, this pod has a particular mood today. They're dealing with some grief. Somebody may have lost a loved one, or they might be dealing with something that are related to pending charges. This is all great information to know, because you could kind of, what you're walking into before you get into the situation. And the buy-in truly came from the impact it had on the inmates. There have been times where people have been extremely vulnerable and shared tears in the group. And that is what makes this work so important, is being able to have that impact at that particular time. Next slide. So continuing on with impact. So we actually had a few individuals from our support group that were released from jail. We actually, there was actually a situation where my co-facilitator actually ended up being in church with one of the members of our group. And it was like, for him, he said it was an aha moment. And it just, and that particular individual just reinforced how powerful that group was and how it helped him and shaped him to be a better person moving forward. Then we have improved morale within the groups. Again, like I said, I can remember times where we would go in the groups and these individuals would be clapping for us. They were waiting for us to get there. Staff members reported that the positive changes that they seen in members. And then members look forward to having a support group. And these discussions, as you build this rapport, they will begin to flow over time, because people want to have a safe place. And, thank God we were able to provide that safe place. Next slide. Here's my advice for others. The investment and impact are priceless. Let me repeat that again. The investment and impact are priceless. Having a mental health professional within the facility is a great asset. Continuation of care/recovery after being released, it should be a priority. Train facilitators for correctional settings. Allow incoming facilitators to observe a few groups in this setting before actually being a facilitator. Expanding access improves recovery and re-entry outcomes, and collaboration between NAMI and corrections is essential. Next slide. And then these are some resources. You go ahead and go to the next slide. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. So hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Farber, and I am the president and CEO of NAMI Dubuque, and my co-facilitator today, his name is David Lang. When David is available to join us with his video, we'll be able to see his lovely face. Can we have the next slide, please? So I'm just going to share a little bit about who I am, how I came to NAMI, and then I will turn it over to David for his introduction. So as I said before, my name is Brittany. I'm going into my 5th year as our first ever president and CEO in Eastern Iowa. So Dubuque is located in the pocket of Iowa that meets Illinois and Wisconsin. And so not only do we serve our Dubuque City Center, but we also serve more rural communities, probably within an hour of each direction of us. So we have quite the unique population that we serve. I came to NAMI in the spring of 2013 as a family member looking for support, and I went through our family support group. I took a family to family class. I joined the board and I never left. So I have dedicated a lot of my time and energy to this mission, and we are happy to be here, and we're happy to talk about our work with those who are justice involved. And I will let David introduce himself, and we can continue on with our portion.
Okay, can you hear me all right, Brittany?
Yeah, we can hear you. Do you want to turn your video on so we can see you?
I'm having trouble with the video.
Well,
But if you can hear me all right, I'll continue.
yeah, why don't you just go ahead and maybe we can troubleshoot that in the meantime.
Okay. So my name is David Lang. I'm a father of three. I have one grandchild. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with diagnosis. I am a person with lived experience. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 18 and struggled with that up until 43. When I was 43, my diagnosis changed to schizoaffective disorder.
Mm-hmm.
That active psychosis drove me to the streets where I was actually homeless for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just say that because I want people to see what recovery can do for people and where they can go when they have resources and support.
Okay, thanks for sharing, David. Can we have our next slide, please? Great. So we just want to talk a little bit about our program origins just from our NAMI Dubuque lens. As it's been said before, there's a lot of fidelity between all of the NAMI programs and the working models, as you know, Marcus shared about and as Becca had talked about also. So first for us, we wanted to establish what we view a peer is and what we think a peer is not. So especially when you're going into a correctional facility and working with those who are justice involved, it's really important to understand that whoever you have facilitating and working in a direct support relationship, that they have some sort of lived experience with the justice involvement or a SMI hyper specifically, you know, like David had said, he had a lived experience with. So we really wanted to make sure that that was really understood between, you know, our team and the team at the jail, so we can actually meet people where they're at and to provide more of that direct relational support. So for us, our goal for all the work that we have with our Justice Involved initiative is to prevent repeat offending and to help develop a working model of supports, not only inside the jail, but also helping those individuals transition to what life could potentially look like outside of jail. And taking that a step further, like Marcus, we had to start somewhere with our work in the jail, and we actually had a professional relationship with a woman named Gretchen. You'll see her videos in just a little bit. So we had known her outside of her scope as the jail social worker. So when we started to work on our new program model that was very much peer-led supports, she had reached out to us wondering what kind of programming that we had available. And at the time, we had been doing a significant amount of NAMI connections, you know, within our agency, but also to outside agencies. So we let her look at the not the curriculum, but we kind of let her look at the material involved with the support groups. And she looked at it and she said, okay. And we started to give it a try. And our very first connection support group was in June of 2022. And then following up with that, it took us a couple years, but we started our first wrap group in July of 2024. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, I'm just going to ask David some questions and he can, you know, chime in from his facilitating and directing experience. So looking at the program implementation and the buy-in a little bit more, David, can you talk a little bit about the RAP and the crisis planning and how that buy-in was equally as important with our NAMI connection model.
Yeah, I'll start by saying, based on the success of the connection support group, and what we talked with the men about, we knew that they wanted more, that they needed more support. So we did have the idea of offering RAP, and go ahead and ask me that again, Brittany.
Oh, sure. When we started facilitating RAP and looking at, the measures of the wellness and the crisis planning for it, what were some of the things that were really good about the RAP material that complemented the NAMI connection material as far as the emotional triggers and how it can be used to create like real-time models of wellness?
Sure. The crisis plan just helped the men greatly. It gave them a chance to write down what happens if they get in a crisis, and it gives them real-time assistance to where they can choose the people they want to help them in a crisis and what they need done. Another important aspect of the RAP and is the stressors or the triggers action plan, to where there's so many stressors in the Department of Corrections, and when they had a chance to write down what triggers them or stresses them out and develop an action plan for that, the help that it gave the men was immeasurable. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great, David. And we've talked a lot about the NAMI connection models and RAP and what that looks like for a population of people that are underserved greatly, we think, and they're also already stigmatized. So we were really trying to look at this from a lens of how do you help manage an environment where people are already entering it with trauma and they're staying in there with trauma, and how do we work to reduce like a hyper vigilant environment with individuals that are coming from all walks of life. So let's go to our next slide, please. And this is a video with Gretchen, and Gretchen is going to give just kind of a brief overview of how the participants are selected, and then David can follow up with our bullet points. So if you can play the video, that'd be wonderful.
So trauma is a very widespread issue, especially with people who are here in jail, my jail, anybody else's jail, because everybody has some sort of trauma. And it doesn't matter if it's big or little, it's just everybody has a trauma story. So what we tried to do was gauge the level of trauma. So I provided an ACEs score, or an ACEs assessment. So the inmates took those. And then I think the other one was PTSD, some sort of assessment for that. So we just kind of looked at them and we looked at the numbers of how they answered it. And the higher the number, obviously, the more significant trauma. And that's how we kind of determined that next group.
Okay, and I was going to say the hurdles really weren't any. We had such buy-in with Gretchen and the staff. We had capped it at 10, no repeat participants unless space allows. So yes, people have taken different RAPs, and not everyone is eligible to participate. And what do we think about when we think about trauma? We think about ACEs and lived experience. And if you go to the next slide, I can describe what ACEs are. Okay, about 64% of adults in the United States reported they had experienced at least one type of ACE before the age of 18. Nearly 1 in 6, that's an amazing stat, 17% of adults reported they'd experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. ACEs was a study conducted by Kaiser Permanente Hospital in California in the CDC in 1995 to 1997, and it established a link between childhood trauma and adult health problems. Some of the trauma, experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, having a family member attempt or die by suicide, substance use problems, mental health problems, instability due to parental separation, and instability due to household members being in jail or incarcerated.
So we,
Next slide.
yep, thanks, David. So having, learned about that and spending time, with the inmates and really understanding ACEs, which is that adverse childhood experiences, we were really able to, look at that and to look at how we are able to communicate with individuals that come from some pretty extreme environments. So, as we've been working on this and looking at crisis planning and really looking at, the bones and the structure of what that looks like, we have seen a lot of these key takeaways, and this is feedback that we get pretty historically, whether it's a rap group or the, NAMI connections, is that the inmates really appreciate the crisis plans and how they can help regulate behavior, and how that also works to encourage ownership and safety from, having like your own bodily autonomy, and how, you can work to have protective measures, for yourself, emotionally and mentally and physically. And, as David kind of said this before, the crisis planning, it helps to get a format that it can be used in real time assistance. So if somebody is struggling, you can have a narrative that is based upon the person when they're well, but also based upon the person, when they're not well. And we really believe in the RAP and the working model that complements the NAMI connection, because it really helps to go with just the ongoing structure of care and how they complement each other with our support group models. So David, do you have any thoughts, which I'm sure you have lots of wonderful thoughts, just about the structure of the support groups and maybe some of the things that we discuss and how it helps to create impact?
Yeah, as far as the support group goes, I'll agree with Marcus on a lot of what he said, the importance of it, how the men look forward to it. One difference is we are alone in the groups with the men. We don't have a social worker or a CO with us, which is very helpful. In connection, it gives the men a chance to really express and explore their emotions. When you see a man in prison have enough trust in the confidentiality of the group that he breaks down and shares his problems, it's quite impactful to himself and to the others in the group.
Thanks, David. Okay, let's go to the next slide and we can expand upon this just a little bit more. So David, why don't you talk about why this learning model matters with the RAP workbook, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan?
Sure. The men, by discovering their triggers or what stresses them out, they're more able to handle real life situations as they come up. We have RAP for reentry, RAP for trauma, and RAP for unwanted behaviors. We do all three in the jail one at a time. We actually had a man who was released who was triggered when he got out and used his trigger action plan to come out of the situation on a positive note. So that was one example where we taught somebody in the county jail, they got out and actively used and is using his RAP plan to manage.
And one of the other amazing things that David and Jim is another co-leader with our justice involvement, is they have homework. David, you want to talk about the homework that the inmates are able to do, or that they choose to do or want to do?
Sure, it's kind of nice because we've got it now in the jail so they can take their workbooks and materials with them back to the pods. And we had them, far as homework, working on their crisis plan, working on their daily maintenance plan. We talk extensively about catch it, check it, change it, how to combat negative self-talk. And the worksheets we give them on that and other worksheets, we've had 100% completion success on all the homework. Matter of fact, the COs and Gretchen have said that they actually are working together in the pods on their homework. They'll get into groups or one-on-one and work together.
Yeah. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? So as David was mentioning about the inmates starting to work together, this actually helps to manage conflict and to promote a healthy culture within our justice system. So, taking that a step further, David, why don't you just kind of loosely touch upon or quickly touch upon maintaining group morale, and if there's any indicators for boundaries or red flags or just things that you've seen that might be important for our participants to know.
Sure. One of the biggest things that helps keep morale up in the group is by having our comfort contract or our safety contract up and enforced. They know what to expect when they come in, and we know what to expect from them. And we had our boundaries tested when we first came in, and by them asking us to do things for them outside of the jail. So they were seeing how far we would go to help, and we had to put an end to some things right away. But the comfort contract really helps the group run smoothly. And as far as red flags, I would say too much inappropriate language, threats or aggressive behavior, or the breaking of confidentiality would be big red flags. And a disruption would be something like too much crosstalk or a member not showing respect to another member, which we then refer to the safety contract and take care of that.
Mm-hmm. And then from that, with just the culture inside the jail, we had been working with the male population for a long time, and the opportunity was given to us to start working with the women's side. So we started working with the honor pods, which David, you might want to chime in on this, but it's honor pods 5 and 6, and then we were able to add more pods. Is that correct?
Correct. The honor pods are pods 5 and 6. People who are not getting into trouble, or they are workers, or they're getting ready to be released, they would be in pods 5 and 6. The other members in the jail heard that we were coming with our support group and wanted to be a part of it, who actually expanded it. Now we do support groups for pods 1 and 4, so we get them involved, and we do the RAP training for pods 5 and 6. So 1 week we do pod 1 connections, the next week we do pod 4, and we go in every week.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can we have our next slide, please? Okay, David, do you want to talk a little bit about being a facilitator and the things that you do to keep, yourself healthy, and how you debrief and how you manage your workflow?
Sure, boundaries are so important, and self-care. One of the biggest things, and I want to mention Jim Van Steenberg right now. He's instrumental in what we do at the jail. He does a lot of the one-on-one peer support that we also offer. I should let you know, we offer one-on-one peer support to the inmates at the jail as well. And self-care is very important. We have one good thing is we walk from the jail back to our center. So we're able to decompress, talk about what went right, what didn't, and act to improve on what we think needed improvement for the next time. We also have been facilitating and teaching so long together that we know if one of us is down or having a down day or a down minute, the other one can jump right in and pick them up. So that debriefing is very important. How do we stay present and not show external responses to the inmates? Just like I said, we have a strong working relationship, and that relationship goes a long ways in running effective groups.
Okay, can we have our next slide, please? So I just want to touch briefly upon our program continuum and what it's looked like since we've started. Sustainability, all of our services are free to the public, so we don't charge for services. We do not take insurance. I do not want to take insurance. So there's a significant amount of fundraising that needs to happen in order to keep our doors open and our lights on and services free between our Dubuque Program Center and the two other centers that we have. We have state contracts for safety net services. We also have opioid grant funding that we were awarded. And then we also have a lot of open contributions and additional grants and corporate sponsorships to help our mission. And from being, from working with the Dubuque County Jail, we noticed that there was a need for services outside of the jail. As David said, we started doing one-on-one peer supports in the jail, and we also offer one-on-one peer supports outside of the jail. And from there, we were able to develop more work groups. We have a wraparound support group, which deals with anything from questions about housing or just navigating, very other points of entry. For individuals, you can talk about addictions, you can talk about substance use. This is kind of like a blended group of support that we offer. We also have our peer-to-peer class. Like I mentioned before, we have our 3 peer-led wellness centers. And like the one-on-one peer support, that's been a huge push for us as a peer-led agency. And we also have anger management classes that we've written and developed curriculum for. We have soft skills classes that we've also written and developed curriculum for. And those classes kind of came and they were born out of need, actually from the women that we had been working with and just talking to them and hearing about what things that they needed. And so we worked really hard to get together, program implementation and initiatives to try to help support them in, the other walks of life. And then also, David, having a lived experience with an SMI and also being a state trainer for our NAMI programs, he's been really instrumental in helping develop a mentorship program. So when individuals come out of the jail and they start seeing us at our NAMI Dubuque Center, we can work with them to become NAMI volunteers and to help the sustainability and the continuation of our work. So let's go to our final 2 slides and we will have a testimonial from Alan and then a final thought from Gretchen.
Brittany, can I say one thing quickly?
Yes.
Just to show the power of connection and what it can do. Our last connection support group here at our center, we actually had 3 individuals who were previously incarcerated show up. And it's just really good to see people from the jail come to connections when they get out. So they're following through with what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, David. We would love to hear from Alan in his video.
I realized that I was triggered by different emotions. I would use when I was mad because I was mad. Oh, I'll show you. Or I would use when I was sad because I wanted to get happy again. Or I would use when I was happy because I'm happy and let's have a good time. But I realized that those emotions don't have to trigger me that way. I don't have to use when those things. If I'm happy, I can just be happy and just go live life. I can go walk through the park. I can smell the roses. If I'm mad, I can deal with it because that stuff's going to happen in life, And I also, there's people that triggered me. I didn't really realize, and the people that I thought loved me and the people that were my friends. And yes, they might be my friends, but for me, it's healthy for me to not be around those people if they're still doing the same things in the same places. Because it's about your people, places, and things. It's about your nouns, and a lot of triggers can be, involved in all that. Also your environment, I learned that just living in the town that I live in, I see it everywhere, you know, and it's always going to be there. Those things are always going to be there. So the RAP program taught me to be able to identify those triggers and to be able to proactively do something about them and stay positive and move forward.
Thank you. Yep. And we'll go on to our final thoughts for this next video.
The inmates, they really do like it. Actually, I got very good feedback from the two of you because you would share that people were coming to the communities, the area, your office down here in the community when they were released. So they were continuing that connection with you guys. And the fact that you guys continue to go to the prisons and meet with them and you're in constant communication with some of them, that's probably more, not probably, that's more than what most of the volunteers that come in here do. When they come in here, they just do, work with them while they're here and then they're done. You guys continue that support, which is amazing. Another positive that you guys shared with me was we had a specific inmate who has been in and out many, many times. He has very manipulative behavior, which a lot of inmates do. You guys saw a huge change in him moving forward and going through and noticing that he was actually helping people in the groups kind of come to terms or understand why they were here and what they needed to do better. So just hearing all of those positive things and no negatives, except for we don't have enough space to hold everybody that wants to be part of it. There's really no negatives to having NAMI in the jail.
Okay, well, that concludes our portion. I know we're almost up to time and I can turn it over to Becca, but David and I will be around, or I'll be around if anybody has questions. And I see Marcus. Great job earlier. And Becca.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you so much, Marcus. The information that you both shared is just so invaluable. And it seemed like people in the chat were agreeing with me. I do just want to start by saying that I know we're almost out of time. So if we can't answer your question right now, you can email me. I put my email in the chat. It's blane@nami.org. But I do also want to say that that while that Brittany had mentioned that RAP is a complementary program to NAMI programs, we have a program peer-to-peer that I mentioned in the beginning that is very similar to the RAP program. So that's something that can be found at all NAMI at a lot of the NAMI locations that offer it. But a lot of the things that are developed and learned in peer-to-peer are similar to what is learned and developed in RAP. And like what Brittany and David do is just so invaluable because not only is it great resources for their community, but it's also it's really important for us to be able to see how these programs can be successful. And then I also just wanted to say as a last thing, is that this presentation reminded me, I did see something in the chat, but that this presentation reminded me is that language is another thing. We think language is so important at NAMI and like to use person first language. It's just another thing that we have to tackle once we get our foot in the door. So, are there any questions that we can answer real fast? Kelly, did you see any quick questions we can answer?
The questions that I see, I think they're going to take some time, Becca. So why don't I share them with you and we'll share them with the presenters and we'll share responses with everyone in the post materials. How's that?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
And I'll just put my email in the chat again real fast. If I know how to spell my name. There we go. That's my email. And yeah, and you can also, I could say it real fast, if you are looking to see whether these programs are offered in your local areas, you can go to, I put it in the chat, but you can go to nami.org find your local NAMI. And I put it in the chat, but it's I think I can do it again. Yeah, right there. You can find your local affiliate or state organization and see if they are offering it or how you can get involved. All right. Well, I do just want to thank everyone so much for attending today. This is just so it's inspiring to see how many people care about these issues and what is being done to try to help. And NAMI is here for you. Recordings will be sent out with an email following the webinar.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. This does conclude today's session. You may now disconnect.